ladies and gentlemen, Chris Lee is about to come on. You're getting a dose of Chris squared, more like, I don't know, Chris to the 10th with both of us up in here. It is going to be off the charts. We're going to be talking about how to unlock your potential with neuroscience. So definitely stay tuned because this is going to be a powerful freaking interview. And I'm talking to you. You are becoming your greatest possible self. You're either here live on New Year's Day. So thank you for being here. Thank you for plugging in to your GPS fuel that is just going to keep burning all day, forever, eternity. That's the GPS. It's lit within you. Your source is lit. So thank you for watching it live, or if you're watching the replay, thank you. How is your 2020 going? How are you doing? How are you creating your masterpiece this year? And keep plugging in. Keep staying plugged in. If you've fallen off the track, if you didn't have the perfect start that you dreamed of, it's okay. Get back on the track. Ask for help. Reach out to Chris Lee, who's about to come on. Send him a message. Say, hey, I heard this interview. It blew my mind. Or, hey, I'm struggling with this. Whatever it is, you got to be able to raise your hand and just put your ego to the side. Put things to the side that might stop you from achieving your greatest possible self, and connect with people like Chris, like myself, like these other epic guests to help you grow into your GPS. Thank you so much for being here. I believe in you. And if you are the person who's crushing it, keep going. Stay fired up, because that's what we're here for. So next up is going to be the iTunes review of the week. This week, it's by Pete and Merritt. Pete and Merritt says, awesome, fantastic content from experts about what it really takes to live a full, passionate, and purpose-driven life. Thank you, Chris, for all this fabulous work. Pete and Merritt, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And if you want to get a chance to get shouted out on a future 12-hour live stream, go to beyourgps.com/iTunes or search Greatest Possible Self on the Apple Podcast Store, and you can give us a review and let us know what you love, what you want to see more of, and how we can improve the show for you. Thank you in advance for doing that, and I love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning into the show. I'm going to introduce Chris in just a second here. Before that, my goodness gracious, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, be ready to take notes. Dr. Chris Lee is about to drop the fire on you, so you definitely want to stay tuned. Fire is good, by the way. The gold, the fire, the silver, the juice, the life force, all of the goodness, the wisdom on you, in you, so you can expand into your greatest possible self. So stay tuned all the way through to the end, because one of these ideas, one aspect of this conversation has the power to change everything for you. Let's introduce Chris. Dr. Chris Lee is a sought-after transformational coach sharing the powerful message behind neuroscience. He's consulted for Fortune 500 companies on leveraging mindfulness for emotional integration and brain-based wellness. He is the proud father to the love of his life, Phoenix, and they can be found enjoying local bookstores, walking on the beach, or walking around their pond talking with ducks. Dr. Chris is on a mission to transform the lives of 1 million people and remind them that every moment they wake up, they have everything they could ever need to live their best life and transform even the lowest of lifestyles into an extraordinary life. So everyone who's tuning in right now, live or replay, give us a thumbs up, send out a heart, let us know that you're excited, you're fired up to step into your GPS in this 2020, watching live or replay. You're stoked for Dr. Chris Lee, because we are going to be bringing the heat up in here. Chris, are you ready to rock the house, my man? We're doing it. You are live on Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self, my brother. Thank you so much for being here on this beautiful 2020, the first day of the year.
Chris squared or Chris to the quantum, man, whatever it is. Such a pleasure to be here, man. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, man. So we're going to dive right in, bro. The theme today is 2020, new year, new decade, bro. What does that mean for you?
This is such an interesting thing, right? It's so easy, and I have in the past, like, let's go to the statistics, right? I'm such an objective person. It's just like the scientist in me, but it's the same year, but same journey, right? New year, same journey. So for me, it's just continuing to do the work, right? Yeah. Once you're on the journey, you're going in the right direction. It's just upgrades, just enhancements, right? Yeah. So trying to recreate yourself, I would say, is a lot more about getting on the right path, right? We always try to put new shoes and expect to go to different destinations, but realistically, you're the only one that can take you to that new place.
Wow, dude, I love it. And I think a lot of people are searching for some kind of flashy, shiny thing that changes everything for them. And if we can fall in love or rise in love, as the phoenix rise from the ashes, I love your daughter's name, man. That's so awesome. If we can do that, if we can rise in love with the basics, with those simple things, and reaffirm that that is everything. That is the magic of life. Like the simple things, talking to ducks, giving a hug to a tree, whatever it might be. Like that is the simple stuff that when we expand our gratitude and our intention and our attention, like everything transforms, man.
Yeah, and you hit it. Like, I think the most powerful emotion that we can experience is just this perpetual gratitude.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this profound thing. It can be so
Mhm.
simple, like going for a walk and like talking with the ducks, like my daughter and I do. Like super small things like that.
Yeah.
That even if I don't appreciate it in the moment, the power of the mind is being able to go through and replay that again and still get out the goodness of it.
Man.
But so many of us like to go back, and then our brain tends to focus on what we don't have, right? So going back and, like you said, giving the attention to the intention.
Mm, I love it. Chris, what a powerful way to start off this conversation. Starting off this year, man. Tell us a little bit more about how you serve your clients with neuroscience, man.
Yeah, so to do that, I want to tell a bit of a story.
Okay.
The life that I'm living now has not always been this really beautiful experience that I've been having. I've gone through my fair share of challenges. In 2016, life kind of hit me like a truck, but it was actually an SUV. I was on my way home from the Walmart, got a $3 bottle of wine, had just been murdered by my midterms in this school. And I was on my way home, gonna go sit home, watch Friends. What else do you do after you get crushed by midterm? And an SUV blew a stop sign, hit me into a ditch on my bicycle, and
Mm,
put me in the hospital. I was put on bed rest for a good amount of time. My brother, who's also my roommate, was having to carry me into the washroom and take care of me. And all these things just kind of spiraled me into this depression. During that time, I very unfortunately lost my father to suicide. So I had kind of shattered the body, and this kind of took the emotion and the spirit with it. And then 3 months later, found out that I was going to be a dad, and that same day got my bill for school, which was about $250,000. So all of that kind of crashed down and spiraled me into, this is awful, right? I was just waiting for that next bad thing to happen.
mm,
And I suddenly had this realization that all of this was a non biased experience, right? All of this had just occurred,
mm,
and that it was my belief systems that had made this seem bad. So if it was my belief systems that had really charged this as a negative thing,
mm.
then what if I change my belief system so that I'm not the victim? This hasn't happened to me, but this is an experience and a challenge that's just lifting the weights, right? How can I learn from this? And I made a vow to myself on a Waffle House napkin that no matter what, I'll be better tomorrow than I am today.
Mm.
And I've just never stopped doing that. And my vehicle for that has been leveraging neuroscience, right? We were never taught how to use this massive supercomputer, the most complex organism on the planet, that 3 pounds of meatloaf between your ears. We're never taught exactly how to use it. We never get the manual with it, but we all recognize its power, right? It's
Mm.
such this incredible force. So I went on this journey of spirituality and science to kind of merge and understand, well, if all these belief systems have been self created and I keep reinforcing them, well, I should be able to change them, right?
That's
This
right.
is a learned behavior, and anything that's learned can be unlearned. And I went down my journey, and I just never stopped learning, never stopped growing, and it's just been extraordinary ever since.
Well, first of all, thank you, God, Source, Universe, Creator, for saving and blessing this epic human being with the life, with life. Continuing your life and with all the difficulties and things going on around you, with losing your dad. I'm just grateful that the creator chose to keep you alive because you're doing some amazing things and blessing the world in such big ways today, man. So just want to say thank you for that divine miracle that happened. And also just like what you're sharing, man, how you changed these thought patterns, how you were showing up, and you leveraged what happened in life to be able to do that. I always love to ask the question, if you didn't have a rock bottom moment, if you didn't have something that transformed everything for you, what would you do, or what would you tell someone to do so that they could create that kind of a transformation that you had, man?
Yeah, that's such an extraordinary question. So my big message is that you don't need that rock bottom, right?
Mm,
Rock bottom provides you an extraordinary perspective at things, right? Because when you're at the bottom, you can look up, and most of us at that point can see all the potential that lies in the moment.
yeah.
And I'm saying that that potential is there 24/7, 365. Every
Mm,
single day, you have that opportunity to look up and say, oh my gosh, right? When
mm,
you get up out of bed and you go vertical, that's a good day, right? That's such a blessing. Like every moment that you exist, all 100 trillion of your cells, every second are doing 10,000 different chemical reactions. You are breaking the laws of physics every single second you are alive. And we're going to use that miracle and that magic to show and influence what we don't have and not be present and like grateful for the things that we have. I mean, that rock bottom is really a perspective point,
wow.
and you can have that perspective every single day no matter what you do.
I want to talk about the potential that you mentioned, because I think that's a really powerful scientific term. There's like what is it, kinetic energy and potential energy. It's been a while since I took some physics
Oh yeah.
classes, but
Yeah, all those are
potential is
great.
like the ability to create some kind of action or some kind of force or whatever it might be. And as far as I'm aware, it seems like there's infinite potential to create a new direction or a new like action, new force, new whatever, new creation in our world, in our universe. But we're just not tapped into that infinite potential and how to do that. Like, how would you explain that to someone who's like, well, all I have to do is like take new action. Does that really change anything?
Yeah, and the absolute, you and I both know the truth that is like, yeah, you just got to take action. But there's new research that's coming out that's showing that your mind will have a 9-to-1 negative to positive ratio of thoughts. So when you have that one positive
Wow.
insight, you have nine thoughts that are telling you, no, you're not good enough. You're not worthy. You can't do it. You can't do
Wow.
it. But those are all built around belief systems, right? That's the default system, right? Survival. That's what your nervous system has been created for. And
Mhm.
so many of us live inside of that potential.
Mhm.
And we can't see outside of it because we've built these walls.
Mhm.
And all you're seeing is a reflection of who you are. But when you can start to break that down, you start to pull yourself out of the fear, saying, you can't, I'm not good enough, this, that, and the other thing. And you start to appreciate little by little, you brick by brick take down those walls. And then you can suddenly see beyond, right?
Yeah.
The quote that I hear a lot of is ask and you shall receive, but I
Mm.
really think it's ask and you shall see, right? The potential has always been there. You just need to open yourself up to seeing that. And like I talked about before, gratitude is such an easy way to do it. Like I can have gratitude for this view that I'm looking at, and I look at it every single day. But
Mm.
I can choose to look out there and say, oh my gosh, look how extraordinary nature is today. I'll never have this same viewpoint again. Or I can live that default network system and say, yep, look at that. That's what so many of us do. We just live that same loop
Yeah.
over and over again.
Wow. I'm curious for the people out there who are resigned and have bought into this cliche mindset. Oh, that's cliche. They've allowed the childlike wonder to leave them. How does someone reinvigorate that sense of wonder?
Yeah, that's such a powerful question. So there's two ways that we can reestablish the thermostat of our happiness, right?
Mm.
Because what we're kind of finding with research is we all have this set point, right?
Mhm.
And we can move it in either direction. And a lot of us tend to move in that negative direction, right? That default network system wants to show you what you don't have, show you what you can't do. So there's two ways to move it back, and that's with the loss of a loved one and sustained stress and trauma. And the other way that we can move it forward is with reaching altered states of happiness,
Mhm.
right? So people that are really skeptical or they're the tire kickers that no, this is complete nonsense. Typically what I'll have them go do is go to a playground and go sit on a swing for a second and just enjoy the pendulum of that swing, right?
Wow.
Because that is an instant trigger for all of us to go back to that childlike state of
Wow.
being,
Wow.
right? And simply doing that, you got some G's moving with you. It'll put you into that state. It's impossible. Like it's like you've never seen somebody sat on a jet ski, right? They're at that altered state, and inside of that, all things are possible.
Wow. So I love that the body gets into motion, which creates a trigger in our mind. Oh, like you used to do this when you were a kid. You used to jump off of, logs or high things and roll around and swing and like play and do all these different movements. But a lot of people have become so rigid in their movements that they've forgotten what it feels like to be that kid and have that spontaneity and adventure and playfulness.
It is. It's so interesting. Kids are just innately geniuses, right?
Yeah.
Like my daughter, she like picked up all of these things so naturally. And when kids fall, they always get back up,
Yeah.
right? And they continue to do that and continue to do that. And they have this fearless motivation to have more life, right? They just want to
Mm.
experience more things, whatever it is. And it's just raw. I'm mad. They're so mad. Like life is awesome and life is just awesome. They have this non attachment to outcome because they're living through intention,
Wow.
right? They don't even know that they're doing it, but they're just trying to experience as much life as possible. And that fearless action that they take on a daily basis keeps them inspired to keep doing. They haven't learned how to like live through that fear lens anymore. And just simple things like that and unlocking that genius. It's not being childish, it's being
Mhm.
childlike, right? Getting back to that play. That's one of the traits of a genius nowadays, and somebody that has an extraordinarily high emotional intelligence is that they play, right? Everything's playful, everything's enjoyable.
Wow. Dude, so awesome. In the evolution of you with neuroscience, getting your degree, developing the camp method, like all this great stuff, like what was that like? Take us on that journey of how you got to where we are today, man.
Absolutely. So it wasn't like a super fun journey, as I'm sure you can imagine. But what I had realized was, okay, I have learned this behavior, right? I've created this belief system that said this is bad, and now the bad things have happened to you, which means your life is now bad.
Mm.
And if I had that perspective and that learned behavior, well, I needed to learn how to unwind and undo a lot of what I would say those challenges other people would call pain and suffering, which you and I both know is just not true. It's a
Mm.
perspective thing,
Yeah.
right? Pain and suffering are just a choice that you choose to have. So I went to the books, right? So I was in the middle of this doctorate program and going through all this information, and they're just kind of showing you, all right, this is what goes wrong with the body, and here's how you kind of like fix it. And I was like, well, that's interesting, but I want to go to like the preventative maintenance, right? Like, how can I both recover, but how can I not get back to that 100% that got me sick in the first place?
Right.
But how can I continue, right?
Even better.
Exponential growth on a never ending journey.
Yeah.
That was my whole thing. It's just continuing to go, continuing to go. So I went to the books. I was like, okay, I can read one book a month, mate, right now, maybe. Right. And I was like, okay, let me learn how to speed read. So I was like, all right, now I can read like 5 books a month. I'm like, still like, and something caught my eye on YouTube at like 3 a.m. And it's this dude just crushing a book
Yeah.
in like 5 minutes. And then someone's testing him.
Mm.
And this dude's like reciting all of this information. And it ended up being Paul Sheely, who I think you know about, and photo reading. So I looked into this photo reading thing and they were talking about all this. And at that point, I had a small grasp on what the nervous system would do and some of the subconscious and things like that. So I bought the course with like, the beans and rice money I had from student loans. And I just started going to the Goodwill and I was picking up, like the nickel books all day long, every personal development I could, every this, every that. I just started practicing. And I found out that I was getting really good at this. And then suddenly I looked back and over a 3 month period of time, I almost read 300 books. And
Dude.
it's not only that I had read the 300 books, I was taking action on it, right? Knowledge is not power, it's
Mm.
potential power. The moment you start to take action, you transform that knowledge into wisdom. And the moment you do that, it's shareable, right? So I
Mm.
can not only tell you about all this, but now you can take what I've learned and you can apply it as well. And that sharing of wisdom is how we evolve as a species, not that we're like super conscious beings. So I started to do that, and then I started to apply, and then I started to go down the neuroscience road. So I was buying like textbooks from the 1980s, and I was going through these textbooks and reading this and reading that. And eventually I started to develop this method that I could look at my old beliefs and say, okay, is this still serving me? Yes or no?
Mm.
Okay, probably not realistically. And then go back and start to unwire and change and rewire the way those neural circuits were firing when I was being triggered. And still to this day, I still go back and I'm still integrating, I'm still processing, still upgrading, still getting my bandwidth back, right? Because stress is inevitable, pain and suffering are a choice. I'm
Mm.
just choosing to grow from those challenges
Wow, it's interesting. I've heard the phrase "pain is inevitable, suffering is optional," but I love the reframe of "stress is inevitable" because there's actually good stress and bad stress, quote unquote, right?
now. Yeah, absolutely.
Distress and eustress, that is going to happen either way. Can you break down those two? Because I'm sure people would want to know the distinctions between those as well.
Absolutely. So, as mammals, short term stress is kind of what we're designed for, right?
Mm.
If you go out to the Sahara and you look at a gazelle being chased by a lion, if the gazelle gets away, 5 minutes later, it's back to grazing, right? It's
Mm.
got that nervous system shut off. And there's a portion of the mammalian brain called the PVN nucleus. And what that thing does is says, we're trying to like, survival is imminent, like something's attacking us.
Mhm.
So let's turn on the stress response, flood the body with cortisol, stress response, like let's go, let's go, let's go. And it gets shut off 5 minutes later, right? That thing flicks the switch back and we're back to where we should be. That's good, healthy stress, right? Our bodies learn to turn it on and we turn it off, right?
Mm.
That's what we're naturally inclined to do. Us as humans have this monstrous mind. So all of the stress that we have nowadays is all perceived stress,
Mm.
right? So we take a loan on a house and now it's like, all right, I can't afford the bill. And that's not really a threat to your survival, but you react the same way. And
Mm.
what we're really starting to find out is that this long-term chronic stress that we're living in actually down regulates that PVN nucleus. So now instead of that thing hitting the switch and saying, no, we're going to be okay, the brain just completely blocks it out because it's like, that's just one extra step. Like, I know I'm going to be stressed. Like, I don't need that thing to tell me to not be, I'm going to be stressed. And we continue in that cycle. So instead of
Mm.
like, putting some water on the fire and putting that thing out, we're just putting logs on it. Things get worse. And this is something that psychology supports too. It's called the negativity bias.
Mm.
The worse things are, the worse we make it, right? And the worse things are, the worse we make it. And this elephant in the room that started off the size of a pencil eraser,
Mm.
3 months later is taking up the whole room and we can hardly breathe. And I know we all have like small examples like, I'll get to it tomorrow, get to it tomorrow. And then suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, right? Your brain does that really intelligently because something has caused you that pain, that suffering, that challenge.
Mm.
And it doesn't want you to relive that memory again. Dreams are really good at reinforcing those pathways. But if you don't address it, you don't integrate it, it gets worse and worse and
Mm.
worse and worse. And that's what a lot of PTSD is. We're reliving that memory. And every time we go visit it, we take away a little bit of the goodness, a little bit of that, maybe it wasn't so bad, and we throw it away and we make it as bad as humanly possible.
I wish people had this instruction manual of how their brain operated and knew it from the beginning, man. With all that you have learned, like what would you say is the type of people who you work best with? Like what are the challenges that they come to you with? And then like using all this knowledge, I mean, you are the expert who applies and administers, so to speak. Here's what the protocol is, here's what the next steps are to create more wellness in your life or to create healing or to create an extraordinary life. How do you know who you work with and like what ways you direct them?
So a lot of people that tend to get attracted to this work have like seen beyond the veil,
Mhm.
right? They've looked beyond and they've taken a brick down from like, those belief systems and they've looked through and said, oh my gosh, it's a really extraordinary life that I can go live. And then for some reason, the stress comes back. They don't have the tools or people get into biohacking,
Mm.
taking nootropics. Now they have all this bandwidth and all this brain power, but they have no tools, right? It's like putting a 10-year-old kid inside a Ferrari and saying, go hit the PR on the track, right?
Mm.
They have a really fast car, but they have no skill. So a
Mm.
lot of this is just teaching the skill, right? That supercomputer up there needs a coder, it needs somebody to instruct it. That autonomic nervous system is going to do nervous system things. We just need to put into it what we're expecting to put out. And the greatest discovery, in my opinion, of the last 100 years has been neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change itself.
Mm.
So if we're constantly running these electrical thoughts through there, like you said, attention draws attention. So where are you directing your thoughts?
Mm.
And that quote always comes to mind, what you think about most is what you become. But most of us don't realize that what we're thinking about the most is something that's running on our subconscious. It's underneath our awareness. Sub is under, and consciousness is our attention, our observations. But we have these belief systems. So we take in stimulus from our environment. It goes up through the thalamus. That thalamus says, is this trying to kill us? No. Is it? All right. Now it goes to a new area. Then it runs through the filter of your belief systems.
Mm.
And if it matches an emotional reality that you've experienced in the past, it'll just run that neural circuit until you put a roadblock in and say, no, no, no. I choose not to do that anymore. I'm going to know that that's an option, but I'm going to do differently. And rush hour traffic is such a good example. Something you can't control, you can only control your reaction to it. So I had a client of mine that was in New York City, an hour of traffic every single day, no matter what. And he was constantly being flooded with these stress hormones.
Mm.
And I said, okay, so you can't control the environment, right? You can only control your internal environment and your reaction to it. So instead of this being stuck in traffic, what if every single day this was a classroom now?
Mm.
365 hours a year
Yeah.
of university time? What if you were downloading books? If you were thinking about it, being about it, right? Like you have a smartphone, you can listen to an audiobook and you can ask it to take notes, like bookmark.
Boom.
bookmark, come home. That small perspective shift, it makes all the difference.
Dang. Dude, I love it. And I love how you said, people have typically started to uncover what their limiting beliefs are, started to take a look at it. And oftentimes there's like this block. I think a lot of people just feel, even after they've done a ton of work, like we had Maximilian Webster in the audience who said, getting out of the fight or flight symptom consciously and taking it slow and breathing, like even he has done a ton of work on himself, right?
Yeah.
But then there's still these patterns, these things, and I know I've experienced it, like that I still get into that fight or flight mode as well. And it's like those people are the ones who you help most because there's still some kind of pattern there, there's still some kind of trigger, and we get to interrupt that pattern. And I'm sure that there's like all kinds of creative ways to do that, to identify it and then to disrupt it so that we can create a new pattern.
Yeah, that's where things get extraordinarily fun. So there's two, definitely one, most likely two pattern generating systems in your body.
Okay.
One, most definitely the brain, right? It creates pattern and it says, okay, we've repeated this behavior with this emotion. Don't worry about it consciously anymore. We're just going to run it through the automatic system.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get in your car, you're not even thinking about it. Seatbelt, turn the car on, hit the radio, and I'm listening to like 1990s like R&B. That's just the way things are, right? And then you're like 30 minutes down the road, and you're like, am I really listening to Soldier Boy again for like the thousandth time? And like, right, we've all had that moment where we're like, where have I been for the last 30 minutes, right?
Yep.
It's your autonomic nervous system just running.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets really fun because you and I have identical brains, identical. If you put it under a microscope, it's the same thing. And yet, the tools that work for me will not be the tools that work for you. Everybody has to be their own scientist. Everybody has to be their own inner astronaut and kind of find what works for you. Now, is there some like universal truths to that? Absolutely. Like breath work, you and I both have conscious control over our breath. But for me, journaling works like gangbusters, right? If I get super chaotic, I'm very, I love learning, love intellectuals. Like I'm always in my head, and I think a lot of us are. Like that's the big quote of 2019 is we're drowning in information, but so thirsty for motivation. It's because we don't have directions. So for me, writing things down and just throwing it up on the page and then looking at it, and it's like, okay, I can take action on this now. One small action is all it takes to kind of get the ball rolling on a lot of this.
Dang, dude, how important is a daily practice of something? Can you tell us about how that affects the brain and neuroscience?
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial, right? So the big point that we need to make before we go into that is you have to know how much stretch you can do. I know that I don't have a lot of stretch before I get to stress, right? And New Year's resolutions, like all of us, like haven't gone to the gym in 364 days, but I'm gonna go to the gym, right? And we're way outside of our boundaries. We're way outside of our stretch zone, and outside of stretch goes stress, and then we're under attack again. So we immediately collapse back to those old belief systems. So trying to make an external change for something that needs to be internal gets really challenging to do. So for me, I know it's just 1% a day, one small shift. Like that's been my stretch, right? For me, trying to touch my toes, I got tight hamstrings, 1 inch every day, like a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. Because like we talked about, you're going to get stress in your day, right? If you have kids, I got a little 2-year-old toddler running around. It's a small pterodactyl that wants to yell at you because she gets frustrated. So she's learning how to have those emotions. So for me, it's really crucial to set the tone. So when she gets really upset, having her understand, are you upset, right? Those type of things. And it's those daily practices that are reminding your nervous system of who you really are. Because the stress will constantly tempt to push you back, constantly try to put you into that state until you hit that 51%. Once you hit that 51%, you knock the teeter totter over, and now life is just extraordinary, right? It's effortless effort. Like you just live inside of this flow. Like I'm sure on this podcast, and you do this all the time, you're like, oh my gosh, who said that? Like, that was brilliant. And like, oh, that was me, right? Like, oh my gosh, like everybody has that internal genius. It's just how often have you connected with that? How often you let that person out to play?
No, that's gold, man. I think it's important for people to recognize those baby steps that we can take. That
Yeah.
is what catalyzes the momentum. But so often, I know I have, and I think a lot of people overlook the value of just simply saying, "Hey, I did it today. Let's do it again tomorrow. Hey, I did it again. Hey, I did it again." and to build up that self-esteem, that confidence, that knowingness that we've done it, as well as
Yeah.
all the rewiring that happens in our neurology, of the patterns that's going on in there too. I think it's so important to keep that top of mind and keep celebrating every time we do something, and to design our life, our support, hiring a coach, whatever it might be, to help
Yeah.
us to stay on track with those baby steps until the crawling, until the running, until the sprinting, until the marathons become a reality. Like, whatever support we get to put in place, man, I think it's an age of, there's answers, there's support everywhere. The question is, are you going to raise your hand and say, hey, I need help, or I want to achieve this? Who can help me? Who do I go talk to? What's the resource? What's the practice? How do I get what I need to get to where I want to go?
Oh, so beautifully said. I mean, yeah, the resources are out there. Who can let go of their ego for a second and say, I need help? Right. And for me, yeah, that was that point. Like I was broken. And I was like, okay, I can't see the label from inside the pickle jar. I need somebody to
Mm,
kind of read this thing to me and show me perspective of what's possible. So even on your hard days, having a coach or having some mentor there that can
mm,
believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself, and remind you that you are just this BA person just ready to crush life, that's somebody that you need in your corner, right? We're not
mm.
meant to do this alone. We are built 100,000 years having tribe, right?
Yeah.
And now we're interconnected more than ever, but we're disconnected from each other, from the real things that matter.
Mm,
Especially when we can have conversations like this. I can look into your eyes, I can feel your energy and thousands of miles away, right?
yeah.
It's so profound what we can have, but that ego wants to say, no, we can do this alone. We'll be fine.
Mm, mm, man, and I think that's so powerful, because there's a lot of people who are tuning in today who have this greatness within them. They're authors, speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs, people who know that there's this greatness within them. And I think the willingness to ask for help, the willingness to say and share with someone who we trust, who we respect, who we admire, like, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. Like, even I have a difficulty with it. There's so many people on here who I respect and admire, and if I simply took the time to go to them and share, like, from my heart, and share, like, vulnerably, here's what's going on, like, such transformation would happen. And oftentimes I say, oh, well, I'm too busy, I'm in my zone, I got to get this thing done, whatever it might be. But if I would just take the time to connect and share, and, like, kind of free myself from that stress and that shame, like, transformation would happen, man.
Yeah, the transformation is inevitable, is the really beautiful thing. And for all the entrepreneurs, everybody that works from home, you have to dedicate time to disconnect,
Mm,
right? Because like I'm in the guest house right now and it's so easy to like just gonna go like I'm gonna go crush emails for a second. It's so easy to do that. And then I'm just reinforcing that disconnect, right?
mm,
Everything you do, every behavior you do, you're reinforcing those belief systems. So for me, I've got double duty because okay, my daughter's now watching me. What is she watching me do?
mm.
Because she's building beliefs not around what I say, but what she sees daddy do.
Wow.
Right. So if I'm going, hey, I'll be back in 5 minutes, then I'm not back for 15. All right,
Mm,
now she's reinforcing that belief that work is always going to be there. And now work's more important than I am, right?
wow.
That logical brain's not turned on in toddlers or kids or most of us until we're 25. So a lot of these belief systems are just getting downloaded automatically.
Wow.
So we need to go back and have some love and have some healing, but also, it's okay to disconnect from this. It's
Mm,
important, it's crucial, right? Performance comes from recovery, not
wow.
from pushing.
Mm, that's good. That's good, man. I want to hear, what else have you learned from Phoenix, since birthing this child into the world. I'm sure there's so many lessons, so many aspects of what it means to be a human being, a creator of our reality. Like, tell us what you learned, man.
Yeah, so kids are the most phenomenal manifestors, period. Right? So like whatever my daughter like is really like craving, whatever she like really wants,
Yeah.
it's all based around experience, right? It's all based around an emotion because she's so present, so tuned in to that emotional reality because that is her truth that she can find, all right, I want this. And the
Mm,
big thing for her is ducks. She loves those ducks. So we'll go sit around the pond. There won't be a duck in sight. 5 minutes later, there's 45 ducks. Like I posted a video the other day, and I was just like, 1 minute, no ducks, nothing. 5 minutes, 15 ducks. Like 30 minutes later, there was like four cranes, like 17 geese, like six ducks, like four mallards, like all this stuff. She's just sitting there, like, yeah, what is expected, right? Like we come here and the ducks come, right? Like she has expectation built from intention. Like it's so beautiful. but it's that constant presence, right? Wherever you are, be there. And that's what kids are so extraordinary at, is just, all right, today's a really hard day. I'm going to cry it out. I'm not going to try to swallow this down. So on your
Mm.
hard days, don't try to swallow it down because it's still there, right? Your brain remembers, it will integrate that. And if you keep building it up, eventually it's going to pour over, right? And kids are just good. There's like, this is bad. I am going to cry a lot, right? And they just, that is how they process, right? That is their tool.
Yeah.
And as we go, sometimes that doesn't become quite as functional for us as adults. So we can get better tools, journaling, meditation, mindfulness, going
Mm.
for walks, working out, more tools in the tool belt for all these things. But kids are just so present, so tuned in. It's just extraordinary. And they're so smart. That's what has blown my mind about all this. She's so smart. Like, she can sign, I don't even know, so many different words and letters. And now she's like combining them together. So she's like learning to speak, and she has an extraordinary vocabulary for being
Wow.
a 2-year-old, but
Wow.
she also is like mixing it with it. So I'm like, what is going on in her brain? I'm like, it doesn't matter. She doesn't care. Right? She has a NASCAR driver how to drive and go like, what's the engine doing the combustion? They don't know, they just do. Right? And that's what kids are just so extraordinary at. I mean, this list goes on and on and on. Like, she's been the best teacher for
Dang, dude, that's so awesome. I love that your commitment to her has been, hey, let's develop that communication ability. Because I think if people could communicate what they're feeling, their emotions, what's going on, more effectively, there would be so much more ease, so much more flow in the world. But because so many people don't know how to communicate, or they do it in an unhealthy way, they do it in coping mechanisms that sabotage themselves, that stuff it down, that repress, like there's so much pain in the world, man.
me.
It's
Yeah.
yeah.
I think we give up our willpower way too easily,
Mm.
right? We're making these subconscious choices all the time. And there's a really fascinating study out of Israel about judges that, have a lot of willpower, and their rate of like releasing inmates is really high at the start of the day. And as it goes on to lunchtime, it gets lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. And then lunchtime comes and it pins back up, right? So willpower is an exhaustible thing. So
Mm.
if you don't have a schedule and you're just kind of going and like, all right, I don't really know what I want to do. Like, if you go to the grocery store without a list, you have a lot of stuff in your basket, right?
Mm.
Same thing's true about life. It's an exhaustible thing. And when we need our willpower the most, when your toddler is yelling at you and all you want to do is just yell back at them, you need to use some willpower, right? You need to put some time in and just sit down and just let them get it out of their system. You have the tools, you have the power to do that. They're learning, right? They've been in this thing way shorter than we have. So
Wow.
we need to be the guide for them. Like, are you upset? What's
Wow.
going on? Talk to me. What's this? What's that? Helping them develop those like healthy coping strategies,
Wow.
it is just invaluable. And I mean, she's a really cool kid, and she's learned along the way. And it's really fun to watch her do it herself. So like, the first thing we ever taught her is like, when she gets upset, just a deep breath, right? We started teaching her that when she's 1. So now she'll get upset or something like silly will happen, or she'll trip, and she like doesn't fall, she doesn't cry, she sits there and and she's just like boom, and then it's done. Like, that's a
Wow.
cool tool to have.
Wow. Wow, because it's like the natural inclination might be to cry, and that's
Yeah.
what they know. But if we give them another tool, like, oh, take a deep breath and just be present, and then recognize, oh, it wasn't so bad. The fall
Yep.
wasn't so bad. I'm not devastated. I'm not bleeding, or whatever's going on. Like, to just
Yeah.
take that extra second to respond rather than to react. Like, what a
Yeah.
powerful tool.
Yeah, there's a lot of really fascinating research that's coming out that says we have these emotional set points, and when a stimulus runs up against that, it's like a reflex, right? You just boom, like your
Mm,
leg goes flying, and a lot of that is like where we go.
yeah.
And instead of us like moving that set point further away so we can respond instead of react, we move it the other way. Like, stress wants you to like flip the switch and just lose it. If you can like start to implement some of those tools, like,
Yeah.
now you're living a really limitless life. You are the
Mm.
full-blown creator, 24/7, 365. I am choosing to have this
Wow.
internal experience. And then the external world changes so fast when you start to get that.
And I think stress can come from a lot of different things. I want to like kind of slow the conversation down, really dive into this because I think it's really important. Um, Stress can come from technology. Stress can come from whatever. It's like the meaning that we interpret it, right? Someone might drop something and one person might laugh and say, ha, I dropped something. And another person might just blow the F up, right? Just like get furious. And
Yeah.
the same thing happened, but what we made it mean and the neurological triggers that happen, pathways of fire, are completely
Yeah.
different, or maybe not completely different, but they're different at some level. And so the person who laughs, they have a better response mechanism, and that
Mm.
comes with time. So a lot of the same things are going to happen to people, but it's more of how have we developed ourselves to respond to those things happening. And I think it's
Yeah.
really important to like hit that home, because the set points that you were talking about, you know, some people, like everyone has coping mechanisms. Some are more healthy than others, right? So ask ourselves, like, what are the coping mechanisms? Is it to go out and binge eat or binge shop, or, you know,
Yeah.
drugs and alcohol, or whatever people like do to cope and suppress the emotion? Or is it more healthy things like going for a run, going working out, journaling? Just like, even I think nature is great, breathing is great. And I got a Nerf bat earlier this year, and I just like hit a pillow, just like
Uh,
a controlled anger, just
yeah, right? Like, the emotions need to be integrated, and, like, there's a difference between, like, frustration, anger, and rage, right? Like, if you
mm,
have rage, like, there's a really, like, easy way to process that in a really healthy way. Get yourself a Nerf bat and go get a 10-cent pillow from the Goodwill and just beat the snot out of that thing, right? Like, get that release out, and then,
yeah,
like, I have those same things, like, I have pillows up here that I just scream in sometimes, like,
yes,
I've been screamed at for, like, 6 hours by this toddler, and it's like, okay, yep, no, go take a nap. I'll be right back, sweetie. And just go up there and just let this out. And then
wow,
I'm like, oh God, I feel so much better now, right? Like,
yeah,
that's a point of integration, right? Having some like strategies like that and having like your environment set up to help
mm,
you process and integrate and just keep moving the ball in the direction that you want to go,
mm.
it's invaluable.
And what I also hear is the stress from a child might be like super intense, because it's like something that we have like almost no control over. They're their own being that are gonna just do
Yeah.
what they're going to do, and we get to be patient and have that willpower of how do we help them get back to center, get back to, you know, peace, get back to connecting with their source and feeling great, you know. And so I love that you have that mechanism that you can go do when you feel stressed out. And some things might burst up to that set point and break through that set point, and it might
Yep.
be a gradual thing. And I think it's better to have habits, like daily habits, like we were talking about journaling, that we can diminish that build up before it
Mhm.
gets to the bursting point.
Yeah, so this is something we call stress sensitivity,
Mm,
right? How much can you take? And there's a really easy way to measure this. So you take 5 deep breaths in, blow it all the way out, start a timer, right? The amount of CO2 your system can handle is a really good way to look at your stress sensitivity for the day. Free tool, right? Really good free tool to look
mm,
at how stress sensitive you are. Because some days I'll be like, all right, 20 seconds. And then other days I can go for 2 minutes, right? So
wow,
like my stress sensitivity is really good.
yeah,
So having points of that, and then I always wear a wearable device that is always giving me like biofeedback, so I can look at, all right, my brain's trying to lie to me, like it says I feel really good, but am I actually doing that? Do I need rest in recovery? Because you, like me, and a lot of entrepreneurs, like we're go getters, right?
yeah,
Won't rest, won't recover, won't take breaks.
mm,
Planning it into your schedule and then really looking at it and saying like, all right, after this, like I'm gonna go inside, integrate, have a good healthy meal, and then go read a book and just chill, right? Go
mm,
sit down by the water, whatever it may be, because as fun as this is, it's also like I'm investing energy. So we need to fill that back up
yep,
or
yep,
you will burn out and crash.
yeah. What's the link between the brain and neuroscience and the heart and the energy of the heart? Like, what have you discovered between those two, and making sure that we're having like whole body alignment?
Yeah, it's really extraordinary. So this used to be like the metaphysics, right? Like you need to just open your heart space, open your chakras type of thing up. Which I don't get me wrong, I absolutely agree with it. But the inner scientist in me is like, is there some data behind that? And right? So if you guys have ever heard of like heart math, they are looking
Mm,
at what HRV, which is heart rate variability, which very simply said is measuring the space between your heartbeats.
mm,
When your heartbeats are very coherent and the space is in between the very like the same, you're very in alignment. Like your nervous system's not reacting to the environment. Like you're not worried about like everything happening to you. You can just be present.
mm.
And what we know, and this is something that goes all the way back to the time of Da Vinci, he went into a clock store and he noticed that all of these grandfather clocks were all swinging in entrainment, right? They were all in alignment, all going at the same. He was fascinated. So he went in there and he was starting to change and move all these things around so they'd be at a disconnect. He thought it was just fault, right? And what he started to find is they would all get back in sync, right? And then what he really started to discover is that it's the biggest pendulum that is setting the entrainment pulse for everything else. And this goes for us too. Our pendulum is our heartbeat, right? The more coherent you are, the more you can facilitate other people seeing that potential, right? Because that signal is not only sending out, but there's a group of 15,000 neurons on your heart called neurites. And those are constantly listening to every electromagnetic signature that you are interacting with.
Wow.
Right. This is why it's very like you have to be very intentional about who you're spending time with because you're constantly listening. Right. So if you're spending time with some people and like they're like good people and then like you notice your posture starting to roll in, your nervous system's getting a signal and it's like, and like kids are really good at this, right? Like there's some people that might be like coming up smiling to me and my little lady and she's like, nope. And then she'll just check out, right? Like dogs do this too. They're just so in tune with it. They don't second guess. They just live that intuition. So having that heart space open, it's a measurable field now, right? Heart math is really good at that. So every single day, I'm training my HRV, getting more coherent because it's serving me to a higher caliber, and me being my best self allows my clients to see the potential in themselves as well, right? They can set that clock as well.
Yeah, well, like when you show up with your heart and your mind aligned, you feel congruent, you feel in integrity, you feel powerful. You
Yeah.
feel like anything that comes your way, you can handle that task to the best of your ability. I'm sure, like if things happen, you're better able to respond to the stress, to the emergencies, to the fires of life that come up. Like how do we respond to that stuff? And so I think like being aware of that heart HRV, like what a top priority of everyone to know the metric of that bio stat to be present with that 24/7 is like, it seems like a
Yeah.
no brainer.
Yeah, it's been a super extraordinary tool for me. And this is something that I've just adapted this year. It's a wearable device because the other one I have is from Heart Math. It's called an inner balance. You clip it on your ear and it's a live feedback,
Wow.
which is really, really cool. So you can kind of look at what that's doing. So when I first got into this, I didn't have this wearable that was going all day. So I'd have this stupid thing clipped on my ear. And then I just let it run. So I had like my phone hooked up to like a secondary battery and it would run all day. And then I'd go back and look, where did my system crash? And where was I doing really good? Where did my system crash? And then you can look at, all right, what triggered it at that time? And then you can start to integrate those triggers better and have higher stress sensitivity. So now I can pop a tire, get shot in the kneecap, like lose all my money, have like fraud. And I'm still like, it's going to be okay. I'll figure it out. Right. Stress sensitivity is really high now.
Well, I think it's cool because you have a visual indicator. It's like there's a like in video games, there's a heads up display that shows what is your HP, your hit points at, what is your mana at, your these different resources that we have, and if we can just be present to it, we just don't know. We don't know what is happening between our heart and our head because a lot of people have not stopped to feel what is going on. We have been trained out of actually feeling the emotions and the sensations in our body, so we can't tell. Like if we don't need technology, but it would really help us to get back to the basics, which we are equipped with from the beginning, but we are trained out of. We learn a different behavior to be more in tune with what's going on in the TV and the radio and the things outside of us, versus inward. Hey, how am I feeling? What is my gut telling me? What does my heart feel like? What's happening in my brain? What are the thoughts that are coming up? A lot of people think their thoughts are real. Like that is the reality. It's like, no, it's the brain, it's the mechanism.
Right. Yeah. It's just this perceived stress that we have going on. And there's some crazy statistic, like over 80% of the stress we experience is all perceived and it never comes to fruition. Right. Something like extraordinary like that. So if you have that in mind and you have that like negative, like 9-to-1 bias, your brain naturally will default to survival. It is your due diligence. If you're serving other people, if you're a physician, if you're a coach, you better be doing the work, right? Because eventually you can only take people where you've been. Your heart rate, if you're not doing the work and your clients are, they will surpass you. And I tell this to all my clients, like, I really hope you guys pass me up, right? but you got a journey because I am consistent. Every single day, I'm doing the work. So if you want to get up there, let's go. Like I encourage it. Like I love the competition type of thing. And I share my data with all of them. So they're like,
That's
what'd you
awesome.
do yesterday, man? Like your system crashed. And I'm like, had pizza. Right? So I'm like, dang it. But right, like there's still a life to live. And I know my system can handle some pizza once in a while. And heck yeah, I'm gonna have some pizza. So today I've got recovery protocols online so that my stress sensitivity might be down for a little bit, but it's gonna go back up. I'm not worried about it. I've got the tools in the tool belt to integrate.
Wow, man, that's awesome. What is the wearable that you use or that you'd recommend?
So this is the only one to date that I'll probably recommend to folks because it has a red light on it versus a blue green.
Ooh,
So this is a BioStrap. They're a really extraordinary company. They've been really, really great with me and all my clients,
okay.
and it's not overly expensive. So the reason that I'm such an advocate of this is because of the red light that it uses for spectrum.
Mm,
Our red blood cells don't just carry oxygen; they carry photons, and those photons carry messages. Right? Those are the three things we've adapted to. Three things in our nervous system for 100,000 years: light, water, and the magnetics from the earth. Those three things are signals and that this is a message from Jack Cruz, who's just a really extraordinary man. Um, so if we're constantly getting a blue-green signal from our wearable devices, no matter what that may be, and from every device you have, whether it's a cell phone, a tablet, a computer, it's stimulating you with blue light. And blue light naturally only comes from solar noon, highest point in the day. And what it does is gives you a little hit of cortisol, just enough to kind of keep wakefulness, to get a lot of work done, right? That was when we got most of our work done was midday. But if you're wearing something that's constantly stimulating blue green light and sending that signal to your nervous system, you have a steady drip of cortisol through the night, through the morning, afternoon, midday. That's why I'm such an advocate because they use that red light, and red light happens at sunset and happens at sunrise, and those two signals are really helpful. So every morning we're up outside watching the sunrise, right? So I'm getting that signal because people have huge issues sleeping. Well, they're watching TV or whatever, don't have blue blockers, whatever it might be before bed, and they're like, I need to take melatonin, right? That's my. I was like, oh, don't take the melatonin. Melatonin is a photoreceptive molecule and it doesn't get stimulated by darkness. It gets stimulated by morning AM light. So you make all your melatonin in the morning. So if you're not catching that morning sunrise, you're not going to have any melatonin to release throughout the day. So when nighttime comes and you get that cascading shadow and that sunset and you're getting all those beautiful colors again, that's the trigger for your brain to produce all that melatonin and shut the system down, get you drowsy, all those types of things. But we're always in front of the TV. So it's like midday, 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 and you're constantly sending that signal, which is just a little small trick and tip and hack. But the big thing, really quick, not to go down this
I
rabbit
love it.
hole,
I love it.
a lot of the research is coming that it's not as important the spectrum, but the intensity. So how
Mm,
bright is the light, right? So the reason my computer is in front of the window is because I'm still getting all this natural light that's coming
right.
in, which is kind of counteracting some of the blue light that I'm getting.
Mm, wow. So it's not as important the duration, but the intensity of it. So that way, if people have like really bright screens, it's going to be the most intense.
Yep. So you can set hacks and things like on your devices. So I have a software that runs on mine that kind of takes away a lot of the blue light that comes on, and when the sunset goes, and I'm still like up on the computer doing stuff like that, or on my iPad or my phone, I'll turn on the accessibility for color blindness, so it makes my screen really red. So at
What?
nighttime, I can still turn on airplane mode and stuff like that. So
Wow.
it's a really functional tool.
Hmm.
So like this, I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's what the accessibility looks like on
Wow.
there. So you just go into tools, go to accessibility, color blind, turn on blue screen spectrum, turns everything red.
So cool, man. All right, dude, there's so much in this, and I know we could keep going down all these different rabbit holes, and it's just gold, man. I want to bring it home with like the final takeaways of this, of neuroscience, of what you wanted our audience to get today, coming onto this platform, helping them have their best year ever, man. What else do we really want to drive home, Chris?
Yeah, I really want you guys to have some functional tools to take home and really be able to do something with because knowledge is not power, it's the application of power that makes that, right? So the tools that I want to give you guys are really simple. I want to give you a meditation, I want to give you some kind of mindfulness technique, and then some kind of thing that's going to remind you of the potential that you hold in every single second. So the meditation, I want to take away some of like the fluffiness of it. I want to make it as simple as possible. So there's one meditation technique that I teach all of my clients to get started. It's square breathing. And it's
Mm.
as simple as it sounds. And what square breathing does, it just drops your brain state from a really high beta, really active, constantly searching for another thing, no focus, no willpower, and it drops you into alpha. And
Mm.
all you do is picture a square. On the left-hand side of that square, you want to breathe in for 3 seconds, and then I want you to hold for 3 seconds. Breathe out for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds.
Mhm.
You can do that for a minute. You can do that for 5 minutes. You can do that for 10 minutes. Really extraordinary tool to have in your back pocket. And eventually, your nervous system's going to learn.
Yeah.
So, this is a really great stress sensitivity. Get caught up in traffic, some stress comes, all these challenges come up. One round around the square, and you're back, right? So, now you can handle some stuff. So, that's a really extraordinary tool to have. The second one is going to be one that I think is underutilized, and that's the power of visualization, emotional intentions, right? Getting in and reminding your nervous system that it has the potential. If you want to have the possibility be found externally, you need to experience it within first,
Mhm.
right? You can't see something that doesn't exist if you've never recognized it before, right? This is that whole conversation that the Indians that were Native American here to America didn't even see the ships that were coming because they had no recollection of them even existing. There's another tribe in the Amazon that's never seen the color blue. They have no word for it. It doesn't exist in their reality. You need to create this reality within yourself. So taking the time every single day to visualize your best life is creating that neurochemistry that's going to be necessary to facilitate the finding and seeking of those opportunities externally. Then the last thing is a gratitude practice. Writing
Mhm.
down 3 things and taking one of those 3 things and sitting down for 2 minutes and experiencing that emotion again, experiencing that thing. It's going to give you that internal neurology hit of life is awesome and reminding yourself how extraordinary you really
Yeah, I love that. And I think in the emotional experience of that gratitude, what I do to supercharge it as well is like breath, right? Deep breathing
are.
to
Oh,
to
yeah.
keep the energy flowing because it can be easy to, kind of just sit still and be grateful, but not have it like really rock us. And
Yeah.
so for me, it's like when I go like just the smile comes across my face of how grateful I am. And I think the breath activates the entire body, the
Yeah.
physiology of my entire body to embody that gratitude. I think I just next level.
It really is. And the tool that I've borrowed from Dave Asprey is to
Yeah.
fill balloon up in your chest with
Ooh.
gratitude, right? Really
Ooh.
store up that emotion and do small, short breaths. And then that final one, you take it all the way in
Yeah.
and you pop it and you let it go through and shimmer throughout your body. And it always like gives me the tingles. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, let's go. Right. Get really
Yes.
pumped and excited about it.
Dude, I love it. Chris, you've shared so much freaking value, man. I know this is the tip of the iceberg. You got a podcast, you got people who can work with you. Tell us about how people can continue their journey with you, bro.
Yeah, so I'm all about the human connection, right? So if you drop me a message, I'm dropping you a message back, right? So
Boom.
go hit up my Instagram, go check out my website, which is Dr. Chris Lee, doctor fully spelled out because someone has the DR. Good for them. So happy for you, forgiveness, right? But reach out, connect with me, shoot me a message, go to Facebook, say hey, all of these things. I'd love to hear your story, and I'd like to help facilitate you on this journey as well.
Mm. Mm. Man, Chris, you're just a rock star, bro. I'm so honored to be on the journey with you. I know we've just tapped into the very tip, man, and I'm so excited for you to keep growing, to keep experiencing with Phoenix, and to keep growing as the epic human being you are. And for everyone who's tuning in, listening, or watching right now, go talk to this man, this legend who can help you get to where you want to go, who can help you break through the blocks, who can help you unlimit yourself and truly be that greatest possible self. Especially this year, 2020, man. I'm just you're crushing it, and I want people to be on the journey with you. So thank you so much for being here and sharing all this value with us, man. I'm stoked to be on the journey with you and to grow together, bro.
Thank you, dude. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
Dude, let's keep rocking it. Let's keep rising like the phoenix from the ashes. The logo isn't behind me because I'm in Czech Republic, but normally it's there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. It's in here, right? It's in here.
That's right. It's in the heart. It's radiating out. So, dude, I appreciate you. Massive love, Chris. We'll see you soon. Okay.
My brother.
All right. Take care.